Welcome back to Glasscast from the National Glass Association and Glass Magazine. I'm Sarah Neiswanger, and I'm joined by my colleague and co-host Katie Devlin. And we're back with another BEC Rewind podcast, spotlighting some standout programming from the 2026 BEC Conference that took place in Louisville earlier in March. Today's episode features highlights from a candid conversation between NGA President and CEO Lakeisha Woods, alongside architect Tim Hawk, FAIA, on the topic of what glazing contractors need to know about design, performance, and partnership when it comes to the future of glass.
So we're going to play a few excerpts of their conversation. They talked about trends, building resiliency, material transparency, new technologies, and more. And before we hit play on that recording, just a special shout out to our BEC Conference media sponsor, Vitro Architectural Glass. Thanks for supporting these episodes. Now let's have a listen.
But in our early conversations, you identified several key trends in design, resiliency, material transparency, and high performance standards. Let's first talk about resilience in construction. From an architect's perspective, thus the title of our session, what does a truly resilient building envelope look like? And how do you balance durability with aesthetics?
Yeah, resilience is a really important word, and it's used a lot these days. I thought maybe we should level set what my take on the meaning of resilience is. And to me and many architects, we're interested in designing buildings that last. And we want to have a building that will be able to adapt to changes. And one of the big examples of how things are changing is so I practice here in the Midwest, and the state of Illinois just released a new statewide building code that dramatically increases the requirements for wind load on buildings. So that's an example of why you would need to have something that's durable. So I don't really think this is necessarily a big area for innovation, which might surprise you, because to me, the most resilient thing that we can do is just use very reliable systems that are proven and make sure that they're put in a way that will withstand the test of time. So we're not interested in trend always. We're interested in creative uses of what we have that is proven.
Very good. Now, you want to tell us a little about the project that was on the screen? Oh, there we go.
Yeah, so this is a building that my firm did in partnership with Max Skog and Merrill Elam from Atlanta. This is the architecture school at Ohio State, and this was done 20 years ago. And one of the things that we did here to make the product application more resilient is we used a secondary structural system, and we actually applied storefront in a way that others might apply curtain wall. And one of the reasons I believe this is more resilient is that if you have failures that occur in parts of the wall, you can actually address it more easily. So there are sections that you're taking out. And additionally, it has a lot more craft to it. And so I think that the skill that was used to put it together was probably contributing to its overall quality and its resilience. And we think it's sort of a timeless aesthetic. So it's 20 years old. I think I'm very proud of what it looks like even now, and I hope in 20 years it'll still be around. Looking great.
Probably because it's at the Ohio State.
Yes, at the Ohio State University, yeah. There's no Buckeye.
Better if it was
not
at
one
Maryland's.
Buckeye. IO, there we go. Just one.
Just one. No Terps in the audience? No, we're trying to avoid, okay, no Big Ten conversations. Of course. Well, you want to, I know that embodied carbon and thermal bridging are top concerns for our glazing contractor members. How early in the design process are you having these conversations? And what do you need from your glazing partners to address these performance pressures?
Yeah, I would say we're not having these conversations early enough. It's a real problem. Where we're energetic and we're interested in early engagement. So on any project where we're trying to increase the quality of the result, One of the challenges I have as an architect is my team, quite honestly, architects and a lot of the emerging architects are not as motivated or skilled or interested in the technical aspects of the profession. And what's happened over time is the bandwidth of what's required from us has grown significantly. So we have to do full-on immersive models and provide user experience to owners way before anything is even conceived. So you have a lot of the fee going into these types of things, and our technical prowess is diminished. Additionally, we have a lot of people in the profession who are really skilled in this area who are going into retirement. And I'm telling you that this know-how is not going to be replaced with AI, but it can be replaced with stronger partnerships that occur earlier. And that's why I said Cindy's example of providing engagement and turnkey design recommendations is an example of where I think the whole practice should go. So historically, you might have had a problem or gotten a lot of pushback from architects in relationship to providing them with recommendations, because a lot of architects we all think we know a lot. And they didn't even laugh at that. That was
I am trying my best not to laugh so much.
But the reality is we know a lot, but we don't know anything at the depth that you do in relationship to the systems you know about. And so we need to have your knowledge. And I think there's opportunities for us to change the delivery model for your members to be there a lot sooner.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about this project?
Yeah, this is a project where we had problems. And a lot of it had to do with the fact that we did not think about these issues quite as quickly. I think there's another slide after this where we begin to show some of the detailing that we had to address. So this is a planned corner detail of those lanterns. And one of the things is there are not a lot of products out there that can be easily customized. So we're using a basic Conair system, and we had to conceive of our own crafted strategies in order to create a system. And we found that there were it was hard for people to understand how to build it. And also, we were using fireproofing on the structural steel, so that created some challenges as well. And so I put this example on the right here of a piece that's offered, but that's the only one. So if you're not going to do something at that angle, it's not going to work. And so if you were able to, as an industry, provide more customization, just sort of like she's talking about, I'm going to go back to Cindy. She's talking about the curving rails and the curving glass. That is incredibly a trend. So I think there's more of an opportunity for you to help us make, and this building does work. It was just a challenge to get through it. Yeah.
It's a good thing to point out. So.
All right, Katie, we're about at a midway point through these highlights, but what has stood out to you so far as Tim has addressed both building resiliency and early supplier engagement?
I really appreciate the example Tim gives of a resilient structure. This example of an Ohio State project where you can replace sections of the facade more easily. And in this sense, resiliency is sustainable, right? There's a saying that the most sustainable building is the one that's already been built. And systems like this, facade designs like this, they let those buildings perform longer. But obviously, when you're developing this type of enclosure, a type of system that's designed for replacement, for repair, all of that requires forethought. And it's made possible when you have an owner, like in this case with Ohio State, where that owner will be the same throughout the course of the building's life. Yeah, let's pick up back on our conversation. We can talk about innovation and how that ensures a successful outcome.
So next, we're going to talk about navigating innovation. So let's focus on glass itself. When it comes to smart glass and emerging technologies, what innovations are you most excited about? Whether it's switchable glazing, bird-safe solutions, or something else, what's holding broader adoption back?
Yeah, I think all of those are really interesting, and we're finding that there are more and more diverse needs and applications. So the project that was shown there is a financial consulting company that we did, and they're working with clients on very sensitive information. So we use switchable glass to provide privacy for them in the main conference rooms, to provide that kind of that level of privacy. And historically, we would have not been able to use glazing there, and the room, when it was being used for that purpose, would have been successful, but the rest of the time, it would have been less desirable. So if we have the ability to give our clients customization in terms of the way they use the space through switchable glass and this types of technology, then we're able to be more successful at getting the design goals that we're interested in. I mean, the same thing is true with expanded glazing around rated assemblies, offering bird-friendly glasses that are actually providing the aesthetic that we want to provide.
Yes.
And to me, it builds off that last question. So we've got to find a way to use technology, which we're building, and your members should be harnessing in a way to help drive that kind of innovation through the digital models that we create.
Very good. So hopefully you all had an opportunity to see that project up on the screen. And
yeah, that's the one right there.
okay, yes. So when you're considering new glass technologies, decorative capabilities, vacuum insulating glass, building integrated photovoltaic, I can't even say it.
Those things.
Photovoltaics, whatever. What assurances do you need from manufacturers around reliability and warranties before you'll specify them?
Yeah, so I threw this project up here because it's not mine. It was designed by David Chipperfield out of London with Substance in Des Moines, Iowa. And I visited this building. I don't know if any of you have been to it. It's the main public library in downtown Des Moines. And it's a beautiful, beautiful building. And the entire design is linked to the success of the glazing. So there's a copper mesh that's within the wall system, and that copper mesh provides privacy and screening, and it's different at night and day. So it's just fabulous. But one of the concerns I would have as an architect about doing this is that is your biggest piece. That is the wow behind the building.
Yes.
And it's not proven. So I think that we have to be careful about pushing innovation. This is completely opposed to what I just said.
I was going to say, well, what do you need in order to, you want to be innovative, but then...
Yeah, so I mean, I think we need to step into innovation is what I would say. So using a small expanse for a feature type of glazing seems to be the way we should go, and to test it and provide ways for you to scale it. I have a hard time probably taking on the liability of an untested solution across an entire facade. And part of the reason that our profession has had such a problem over the last 40 years is because we're either not solving these at all and creating buildings that are not performing, or we're not taking any steps to be innovative. And there's got to be an in-between. So, you know, another building at The Ohio State University designed by Peter Eisman out in New York City, the Wexner Center for the Arts. I mean, 2 years in, it leaked. So they've gone back in twice, I believe, and done millions of dollars of renovations to this building. And to me, it's a really provocative building, and it makes a lot of sense, but it's not performing. So that's a disservice to the client and the citizens of Ohio. And I think we should be careful about how much innovation we bite off and chew. We should step into it.
But do you also think that it may be tied to improving communication between all of the parties that are involved?
Absolutely.
In making that project a success?
Yeah, so that project was done 30 or 40 years ago, right?
Yeah.
And so things were very siloed at that time, and so you had architects and designers who were trying to be and driving innovation with absolutely no knowledge of where we were going. So there were no tested products, and it was a failure. And basically, it was a lot of the glazing systems that ended up failing. So I think if we can increase the communication to build off of that idea of early collaboration, I think we'll do better. And really, it has to do with us having more respect, the architectural community actually having respect for those who have the know-how, and admitting that we do not necessarily, well, I'm not even going to say do not necessarily, admitting that we do not have the technical know-how.
Well, it sounds like we have an opportunity to connect to you and give you some more additional know-how.
Yeah.
Well, as we move on, you've advocated for glazers and fabricators to take on more design leadership early in projects. We've just talked about that. What would the ideal collaboration look like, and how should contractors position themselves to be valued partners rather than just executioners?
Yeah, so I think that there's been some changes in the way projects are delivered in a positive way over the last 20 to 30 years. And a lot of it has to do with early engagement for pre-design services. So we're getting a lot of engagement from HVAC contractors and electrical contractors and other skilled tradesmen who are helping us and our engineers solve the challenges that come with design. But we are not getting early engagement unless it's a major building, like, you know, my wife works for NBBJ and they do huge skyscrapers. So that's different, where you're putting a lot of money into the skin and there are building envelope consultants that are actually driving engagement. But on the majority of the buildings that we do in the United States, there's very little engagement. So what happens is we are learning that what we've specified is not a match for the problem that needs to be solved, and we're having to address things in construction. And the client's frustrated, the general contractor has probably put the glazer in a position where they are compressed for time, and there are challenges that are abound. And so if we want to work in a way that can be more positive, I think we need to bring the construction managers into a dialogue about how we can have fabricators and people with the knowledge and the know-how at the table to begin. And it's not just about having a manufacturer, because manufacturing is all great and fine, but they're not actually looking at the problems that need to be solved on that day. So to me, a lot of it has to do with early engagement, and quite honestly, you could be charging for pre-construction services where you're currently now just offering free advice and people are taking it from you.
Yeah.
So,
well, and it's sort of what we talked about yesterday. We had a strategic planning session, and part of that was saying how oftentimes by the time it gets to the glazing and the installation, now the whole timeline is pushed, and now they're rushing our members for the work and they have to sort of make up the timeline for everyone else.
Yeah.
So in this last segment, I really like how Tim pinpointed some key areas to empower the glass industry to step up, both either as part of a pre-con team and just to be kind of loud in sharing their expertise. You know, he has stated clearly the architects are looking to the glass fabricators and suppliers to be the expert. So it honestly feels a little bit like our side of the industry getting comfortable stepping into those shoes early and often and loudly.
Well, we so often talk about in our, NGA programming and, throughout all of our technical and advocacy work, like there's a glass for that. Like whatever you need, there's a glass for that. The glass industry has the products to meet what architects, owners, occupants, what they're looking for in their buildings. But it's getting the right product for the right application in front of the architect at the right time. And that requires that engagement and also education. The industry needs to demonstrate the longevity, the proof of performance of glass and glazing solutions that are available. So that's a challenge to our industry, and I know it's one that companies are already taking on. But thanks, so much, Tim, for getting on stage with Lakeisha. This was a really fun conversation from BEC.
And that wraps up today's episode of GlassCast, the special feature from the BEC Conference 2026, our BEC Rewind series. So stay tuned for the next episode.